Here's the secret to making your 808s hit fat and clean. Before we get into it though, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and like the video to help other producers like you that need help with this to find the information that they need. That's why I'm doing this video. So by you doing that, you're helping me fulfill the purpose, which brings you good karma, and it's gonna come back to you. So here's the problem. Producers crank up their 808s. They sound distorted, they're clipping, they get buried in the mix because everything else is loud too. You don't want to do that. When you do that, you bring in more problems than you want into your beat making and your mixing. At the end of the day, you're going to give yourself ear fatigue. You're not going to be feeling it. Sometimes producers think that just because they turn their 808 up louder, it's going to hit harder, but that's the problem. It's not going to hit harder. It's going to make it harder to listen to for the listener, and they're going to turn that shit off. So you don't want to do that. Loud doesn't mean powerful. Clean 808s hit harder. So in this video, I'm going to give you 4 tips to make your 808s hit clean and hard. So here's a couple of signs that your 808s aren't hitting hard. Your mix is muddy. There's something wrong with the 808. That's the low end. It's usually a low end problem. And that's the first place you need to attack in the mix is your low end. Your kick and your 808 are clashing. That's another sign that there's something going on with your 808. It's not really hitting. It's not. You're going to fatigue your listeners' ears. They're not going to know what's going on. They're going to hear the clash. They're not going to like that frequency. They're going to turn that shit off. And when you turn it up, the problem becomes even more apparent when you turn the 808 up. You might even eat up all the headroom by turning it up. That means that your 808 isn't clean. It might be hitting hard as far as like the bass. It might be eating up a lot of the headroom in the bass area, the bass frequency, but that don't mean your 808's hitting hard. There's 3 causes to this problem. So before we get into the 4 solutions, let's get into the 3 causes. Number 1, boosting the low end. You boost the low end and it's probably not even necessary, especially if you're boosting before you cut, before you're cleaning up and you go boost, you're just bringing more mud into your mix, which you don't want to do. Number 2, stacking the kick with an 808, which is fine, but if you haven't done any cleaning up on the EQ end, you haven't done any carving out of the space, then you're just going to be bringing more mud into your mix, and you're going to have 2 instruments, the kick and the bass, fighting for headroom, and they're going to sound like just like a big glob of mess, which you don't want. Number 3, you're using weak ass 808 samples from the gate. If you feel that you already, when you put it in there and you got to throw a compressor on it and an EQ and do all this extra shit to it, you're already starting off with the weak ass sample. You want to start off with 808s that are already knocking clean and hard to where you don't have to do all that doctoring up. If anything, you might have to do a little EQ just to carve out for the kick and everything, but hey, start off with the right samples. If you don't have the apeshit 808 2 plug-in, this is partially why your 808s ain't hitting the right way. Make sure you grab it. I'm going to leave a link to it in the description so you can grab that as soon as possible. So let's get into the 4 tips on how to make your 808s not clean and hard without clipping. Number 1, which I've already previously touched on lightly, but I need to drive the point home. Start off with a clean 808 sample from the jump. Don't go grabbing your homie sample that he sent you that he said, oh, this is Metro Boomin's 808. This is Lil Thugger's 808. Who cares? If it's not knocking, if it's bringing more mud into your mix, if it's not clean, it's going to be hurting your production. Make sure you're using high quality tools. Some producers just want the easy way. They want to, oh, I'm just going to go scan online and I'm going to find a free drum kit and the free 808 and I'm going to use that. But you're hurting yourself because you don't know what that previous producer who put that in there did to it. They may have distorted it and added way more mud than it had originally to it and gave it to you, and now you're dealing with a messed up 808 sample that's killing your mixes. You don't want to do that. You want to use high quality professional tools that are designed to knock, especially when it comes to an 808. You want that sample and that preset to be clean. You want to use a sub that already has body, that already has the punch that you need, because that's going to save you time in mixing, and it's going to help you not have to just go and start doctoring up sounds, especially if you don't know how to make it knock the way that you want to. Find a sound that's already knocking the way that you want to, and then go from there. You also want to preview it in mono. Some of these plugins or some of these samples, it's in stereo. That's why I tell producers, even when you're using the Apeshit 808 plugins, put the gain plugin on there and put it in mono. So that way your 808 isn't hitting in 2 channels, it's hitting mono. That's where you get that real knock from, and that's where you're gonna get that real centered bass sound. Number 2, carve space. You wanna carve out space, man. When that kick and that 808 is clashing, that is because you don't have space carved out for it. You wanna make sure that you're using the EQ, and there's a couple of ways you can carve out space. The number one is the EQ. Where your kick is knocking at, make sure you lower your 808, and vice versa. Where your 808 is knocking at, lower your kick, cut right there. So that way you have space for the 808 to do what it's doing, do its thing, and you give space for the kick to do its thing. But if you don't do that and they're in the same pocket, they're going to be fighting for space, causing more mud than necessary in your mix. You could also do a side chain where you make sure that where the kick is hitting, the bass, the 808 is ducking a little bit so that it's not competing together. Those are 2 ways that you could make sure that you're cleaning up and carving out the space for your 808 to hit properly. Number 3, add some saturation or soft clipping. Now you're ready to do the saturation and soft clipping. If you tried to do soft clipping before and it's already distorted and it's just way out of this world loud, that soft clipper isn't going to work correctly. You have to make sure that you've cleaned it up, you've cleaned up the space, do your gain staging, as I said in the previous videos. Make sure you gain stage and make sure that 808 is knocking, but it has headroom. You have enough headroom to where you're putting a soft clipper on there, is making sure it's not clipping at all. So make sure you do that, do your due diligence, and figure out how to gain stage. I touched on that in a previous video. Make sure you go watch that. Avoid distorting. Go for the warmth, because sometimes when you're adding the saturation and you're adding the soft clipper on there, that can easily bring in distortion. So you want to make sure you know the difference between the sound distorting and the sound sounding warm. And you could do that with your eyes too, with the leveling, making sure the level's right. But beyond that, trust your ears and train your ears on the difference between something that sounds distorted and fuzzy and messed up versus warm, fat, and loud. You could even bring some parallel compression to this aspect of it too. Throw a parallel compressor on the bus, send that 808 to that bus. You could beef it up a little bit like that without eating up the headroom and adding more fatness without having to do too much to that 808. Tip number 4, use a limiter or a soft clipper, but don't put it directly on the 808. Use it on a stereo drum bus, because if you put it directly on the 808, it might smash it, it might crush it, it might limit its expression, and you don't want to do that. You want that 808 to breathe. And so send all your drums to that drum bus, including the 808, and put a clipper on there. That'll still allow the 808 its own space, and it'll give it the ability to do what it needs to do without being over compressed or over processed. And it's going to allow it to open up the mix, if anything, rather than being squashed and, like I said, limited. Make sure you go download that Apeshit Rampage plugin too. It's free, it's on the house. You definitely want this in your arsenal. So those are 4 tips to help you get your 808 knocking hard and clean without clipping. I really hope you enjoyed the information. Make sure you like and subscribe and leave a comment to engage, so I know that this information is helping you. Also, remember, your 808 is just as good as your drums. If your 808 is knocking but your drums ain't, it's gonna make your 808 sound whack. So make sure you check out the video where I go into how to make sure your drums aren't sounding flat and how to breathe more life into them and get them knocking. Okay? I'll see you on the next one.